There's a smell you get in a truck stop diner at 3 in the morning that you can't find anywhere else on Earth. It's a mix of burnt coffee, stale cigarette smoke baked into the vinyl seats, and the faint, sweet perfume of regret. You sit there, staring into a mug of black coffee that could dissolve steel, and you listen. If you listen long enough, you'll hear a story. That's how I first heard about the bridge. I was somewhere deep in Missouri, hauling a load of machine parts to Joplin. The rain was coming down in sheets. I pulled into a place called the Weary Wheel, a greasy spoon with a flickering neon sign. Inside, a couple of other drivers were huddled over their food, all except for one old-timer, parked in a corner booth. He looked like he was carved out of an old road map. He was talking to the young waitress, but his voice carried. It was low and gravelly, like tires on a dirt road. "You take that back road shortcut, the old 94?" he asked her. "You ever get a strange feeling on that old iron bridge, the one over to Little Femme Osage?" The girl shrugged. "It creaks. Scares me a little at night, I guess." The old man shook his head slowly. "Oh, it ain't the creaking you need to worry about, little girl. It's the air, the river down below. It's a collector." I leaned forward a bit, my coffee forgotten. This was better than the talk radio I'd been listening to for the last 6 hours. "A collector of what?" I called over. He turned his pale, watery eyes on me. They looked like they'd seen too many sunrises. "Memories," he said, plain as day. "You drive over that bridge, and for 30 seconds, the air in your cab will fill up with the smell from your past, something you haven't thought about in 20 to 30 years, something you thought was gone forever." I let out a short laugh. "All right, Pops, you been sniffing your own diesel fumes?" He didn't get mad. He just looked at me with tired-out pity. "Laugh all you want. I crossed it one time, and my whole rig suddenly smelled of the hospital soap they used to wash my firstborn son with. I hadn't thought about that in 40 years. Cried like a baby right there on the highway." He took a long sip of his coffee. "But the river? It don't give nothing for free. It lets you smell the memory, and in return, it takes a little piece of it with it. Keeps it down there in the mud and the current. A little tax for crossing." He looked out the window. "Most times it's just a little piece, but sometimes the river gets greedy." The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. I was a practical man. I didn't believe in ghost stories. I paid for my coffee, nodded at the old-timer, and walked out into the rain, the roar of my Cummins engine chasing away the old man's story. So I thought. A few months later, I was deadheading back from Illinois. My dispatcher, a slick-voiced kid named Dave, called me up. There was a nasty wreck on the I-70. The highway was shut down. "Gonna have to route you south," Dave's voice crackled. "Take 94 west. It's a 2-lane blacktop. Bit slow, but it'll bypass the whole mess." State Highway 94. The name rang a bell. It wasn't until I was 20 miles down that winding road that I remembered the old trucker, the Little Femme Osage River, the memory bridge. It was ridiculous. Still, a part of me was curious. I saw it from a half-mile away, a single-lane iron trestle bridge, rusty red like a skeleton arching over the dark water. I took a deep breath, gripped the wheel, and eased the truck onto the bridge. The moment my front tires hit the first wooden plank, it happened. It was like a switch was flipped. 1 second, my cab smelled of stale coffee. The next, it was filled with the smell of my grandmother's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon. The rich, warm scent of baking apples, cinnamon, melting butter. It was so real, so powerful that I gasped. My eyes started to water. Just as quickly as it came, it was joined by another scent. Underneath the apple pie, a new fragrance bloomed. Light, sweet, a little bit cheap. Vanilla and something floral. It was the perfume my high school girlfriend, Sarah, used to wear. The smell of nervous excitement, of young love. I was halfway across the bridge now, the truck's cab a whirlwind of my own past. Then the final scent hit me, cutting through the sweetness. Gunpowder.
hops, number 9 gun oil, and old dry wood. It was the smell of my father's gun cabinet, the one he'd let me help him clean after a day of hunting. The smell of a quiet, shared task. The smell of my father's pride. I was across the bridge. My tires hit the solid asphalt, and in an instant, all of it was gone. The cab went back to smelling like a truck cab. I pulled the rig over to the shoulder, my hands trembling. My heart was pounding like a drum. I wasn't scared. I was stunned, elated. It was like I had just been given a gift, a brief, beautiful visit with the ghosts of my past. The old trucker wasn't crazy. He was right. I sat there for a long time as darkness fell over Missouri, and all I could think was, I have to do that again.
That first crossing changed something in me. The bridge became my secret. For the next year, whenever Hall took me anywhere near that part of Missouri, I'd find a reason to take Highway 94. I'd lie to the dispatcher, I'd burn the extra fuel, I'd mess up my logbook. It was worth it. Each crossing was the same beautiful 30-second miracle. Grandma's kitchen, Sarah's perfume, my father's gun cabinet. It was an addiction, a dose of pure nostalgia that made the loneliness bearable. I completely forgot the old trucker's warning, the tax, he'd called it. It seemed like a bargain. Then, about the 10th or 11th time I crossed, something was different. I rolled onto the bridge, full of anticipation. The smell of apple pie hit me, but it was thinner, fainter, like listening to a favorite song on a cheap, tinny radio. The richness was gone. Sarah's perfume was like remembering the bottle, not the scent itself. And my father's workshop? It was just a whisper of gunpowder. I crossed the bridge feeling strangely empty. Later that night, I was talking to my sister on the phone, and I tried to bring the memory of Grandma's pie to mind, the actual sensory memory. Nothing. There was a complete and total blank where that memory should have been. The scent, the very soul of the memory, it was gone.
A cold dread started to pool in my stomach. I hung up the phone and with a shaking hand tried to remember Sarah's perfume. Again, nothing. I knew she wore it. I knew I loved it. But I couldn't for the life of me recall what it smelled like. The bridge hadn't let me borrow the memories. It had replaced them. It had taken my original copies and left me with its own faint, ghostly imprints. The old man's words came rushing back. It takes a little piece of it with it. This wasn't a small tax, this was theft. The river hadn't been sharing memories with me, it had been feeding on them, leaving me with hollowed-out husks. I had willingly driven my most cherished memories into its mouth over and over again and let it devour them. The feeling wasn't nostalgia anymore, it was violation. I vowed never to go back. I would avoid that road, that state, that entire corner of the country if I had to. But the thing about the road is, you don't always get to choose where it takes you.
I managed to stay away for over 2 years. I lived with the blanks in my memory, a constant, dull ache for things I could no longer fully grasp. But trouble finds you on the road. I was hauling a priority load, medical supplies, to a hospital in Kansas City. A brutal ice storm had swept across the Midwest. Everything was chaos. I was stuck in a 50-mile backup on the interstate. Dave called, his voice tight with stress. "I've got one route for you. A stretch of old 94 is still open. It's dicey as hell, but it's your only chance. Can you do it?" Highway 94. My blood ran cold. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Dave, anywhere but there." "Look, I don't have anywhere else," he snapped. "The hospital needs this stuff. People are waiting. You gotta do this." He was right. I couldn't let people down because of a ghost story. My duty outweighed my fear. Swallowing hard, I told him I'd do it. The drive was terrifying. The road was slick with ice. And then I saw it, up ahead, looming out of the winter twilight. The bridge. It looked worse than ever, cloaked in ice, like the jaws of some ancient monster. My plan was simple. Hold my breath, close my mind, think about nothing. Don't let it in. I hit the bridge, the tires groaning on the icy planks. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second. For a moment, nothing happened. I thought, with a surge of relief, maybe in the winter, maybe it sleeps. I was wrong. The smell that flooded my cab this time was not one of the old ones. It was new. It was the sharp, sterile scent of a hospital. Antiseptic, bleach, and clean, starched linen. Underneath it, the faint, sweet smell of baby powder. It was the delivery room where my son, Micah, was born. It was my most precious memory. The smell was overwhelming, 1,000 times stronger than the others had ever been, but this time there was no joy. It felt invasive, surgical, and with it came a physical sensation. It felt like a cold, ghostly hand was reaching straight into my chest, into my very soul, and was pulling. It was a tearing, a draining, a profound and horrifying emptiness spreading from my core. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound. I stumped on the accelerator. Ice be damned, and the ridge shot forward, fishtailing wildly before finding traction on the other side. I slammed on the brakes, the truck jackknifing slightly. I was breathing in huge, ragged gasps. The hospital smell was gone. I was shaking so violently that I couldn't hold the steering wheel. After a few minutes, I pulled out my wallet, fumbling it open to the picture I always kept there. It was a worn photo of my wife, Laura, and my son, Michael, who was now in college. I looked at their faces. I knew their names. I knew that the woman was my wife and the young man was my son. I remembered the fact, but the feeling, it was gone. The immense, unconditional love I had for them, the fierce pride, the deep, warm connection that had been the anchor of my entire life, it wasn't there anymore. I looked at the photograph of the two most important people in my world, and I felt nothing, just a cold, intellectual recognition. The river hadn't just taken a memory. It hadn't just stolen a smell. It had gotten greedy. It had taken the love itself. It's been 5 years since that last crossing. I'm still driving. The road is the only thing that makes sense anymore. It asks for nothing but miles. I never told anyone what really happened. How do you tell your wife that when you look at her, you feel the same polite detachment you feel for a stranger? How do you explain to your son that the pride in your voice is an act, a play based on the memory of a feeling you could no longer access? I became a ghost in my own life. I go home for holidays. I say I love you because I know it is the correct series of words to say. I played the part of a husband and a father, and I must be a decent actor because they don't seem to notice. Or maybe they do, and are just too kind or too scared to ask what put the hollowness in my eyes. The loneliness I felt before was nothing. This is a loneliness of the soul, an isolation that I carry with me into every crowded room. I am haunted by the knowledge of what I've lost. The substance is gone, washed away downstream in some forgotten, greedy little river in Missouri.
Sometimes, late at night, in a quiet truck stop diner that smells of burnt coffee and regret, I see a young driver, eager and full of talk about shortcuts. And if I hear them mention the back roads west of St. Louis, I'll pull up a chair. I'll look them in the eye and I'll tell them my story. I'll tell them about a rusty old bridge and a river that collects memories. And they look at me the way I looked at that old man all those years ago, with a mixture of amusement and pity. They think I'm crazy, just another road-weary trucker. They never believe me. They thank me for the story, climb into their powerful rigs and rumble off into the darkness, chasing a deadline. And I just sit there, stir my black coffee, and pray they stick to the interstate. I pray they never get curious, because that bridge is still out there,
The river is still flowing under it, dark and patient, and it's always hungry for more. It took my past, then it took my heart. And all it left me with is the road, this long, empty road. My last run, the one that never ends.